Let's start our story in Pune, India. It's a city where ancient history and modern ambition live right next to each other. And like any major city, it's absolutely packed with students, all of them dreaming of the future. Our story takes place at one of these colleges, a whole world filled with future engineers, pharmacists, and doctors, all sharing the same space. But you know how it is. Under all that youthful energy, rivalries can simmer. And this isn't just some story about a silly college argument that gets forgotten. No, this is about one single moment of casual cruelty that planted a seed of pure hatred that was cared for in silence for years, until it finally grew into something truly monstrous. This is how a simple insult can become a deadly curse. I mean, really think about that for a second. A stupid comment, a moment of public shame. These things happen, right? We get angry, we might say something we regret, but then we move on. Time passes, and the memory gets blurry. But what if it doesn't? What if for the other person, time doesn't heal the wound at all? What if it preserves it, keeps that feeling of humiliation just as raw as the day it happened? What if they hold on to that moment, not as a memory, but as a promise they make to themselves over and over again, just waiting for the perfect time to unleash a revenge so patient, so meticulously planned that it feels like it breaks all the rules of logic and maybe even the laws of nature itself. You know, it began with practically nothing. Our story starts with Praneet, a first-year engineering student. He's new to the city, a quiet kid from Madhya Pradesh, and he's on his college bus, heading home with his friend Nathan. It's a hot afternoon. The bus is stuck in traffic. A motorcycle pulls up right alongside. The guy on the bike is Asim, a pharmacy senior, and he's got that kind of easy confidence, you know? He's a big man on campus. He looks over at Praneet, who has a darker complexion. And with that thoughtless cruelty that only young people have, Asim yells out, "Hey, Kalu." It's a slur, a cheap shot about his skin color, meant to make him feel small. Praneet's face just burns with shame, and then anger. He yells an insult right back. And just like that, the quiet afternoon is shattered. It's a full-blown shouting match, right there for everyone on the bus and on the street to see. As the bus finally starts to move, pulling away from the curb, the fight hits its peak. Asim is furious that this junior, this nobody, dared to talk back to him in public. He leans off his bike and screams a final chilling threat. He didn't just say he'd get even. He promised to find Praneet where he lived, to come to his home, to make him pay not at college where you're just another face in the crowd, but right there, in his own neighborhood. It was a threat shouted in a moment of pure rage, but it hung in the air with this awful heavy weight. A line had been crossed. This wasn't just a college spat anymore. This was a promise to tear Praneet's world apart. Asim was not the kind of guy to make empty threats. His ego was bruised and he needed to settle the score. So he followed the bus, staying just far enough behind, his anger turning into something cold and hard. When Praneet and Nitin finally got off at their stop, probably thinking it was all over, Asim was watching. And this is where things take a really dark turn. By some cruel twist of fate, Asim spots a guy he knows from the area, a local tough named Mukund. Asim rushes over, tells his side of the story, making himself out to be the victim. Mukund, maybe he was just bored, agrees to help. The two of them hop on Mukund's bike and they speed down the street after Praneet, cutting him off just a short walk from the safety of his own front door. The trap had been set. What happened next wasn't just a beating, it was a performance. With Mukund standing there to make sure Praneet couldn't fight back, Asim just let loose. He slapped Praneet hard, over and over again. The sound was sharp, ugly. And of course, people started to notice. Curtains twitched in windows, doors opened just a crack. Praneet's neighbors, people who saw him every single day, just watched. They watched in silence as he was humiliated, just steps from his home. Blood filled his mouth, the taste of his own shame. Asim then grabbed him by his shirt and gave him one final order. From now on, you walk with your head down at college. If I even see you look up, I'll tear your eyes out. The physical pain, that would be gone in a few days. But the memory of all those eyes watching him, that feeling of being completely powerless, that was a special kind of poison. And it sank deep into Praneet's soul, where it would just sit and fester. After that, the whole atmosphere at college was just toxic. Praneet lived in this constant state of fear, always looking at the ground. It got so bad that some of the older students had to get involved. The engineering and pharmacy seniors held a meeting. They forced a truce and made the two boys shake hands. And so the fighting stopped. An uneasy kind of peace settled over them. And then, as the months turned into years, something really strange happened. The hatred, it seemed to just fade away. In its place, this casual, almost unbelievable friendship started to form. They started hanging out, they graduated, they went to parties together, drank together, told jokes. For Asim, the fight was just some stupid thing that happened a long time ago, a dumb story from his youth. He had completely moved on, and he truly believed Praneet had too.
Now look at this timeline for a second. That's 4 years, an entire college education. For Asim, those 4 years washed away the anger, the pride. It was all ancient history. But for Praneet, those 4 years were an incubation period. He smiled, he laughed. He became Asim's good friend, a guy who was always around. But that friendship was a mask. And underneath it, the memory of that day, the slaps, the blood, the neighbors watching, wasn't forgotten. No, it was being replayed over and over. Praneet was like a predator, learning every single one of his prey's habits, all while pretending to be a friend. The hatred hadn't gone away, it had just gotten older, colder, and infinitely more patient.
And then, years after they had graduated, things started to go horribly wrong. Asim, who had always been healthy and strong, started to get sick. But this wasn't a normal illness. This was a slow, creeping horror that began to take apart his reality, piece by agonizing piece. It was an attack on his mind, a war against his senses. And it all started with a sound that no one else could hear. Every single night, after 11 p.m., it was like clockwork. The normal city sounds would just fade away for Asim, and they'd be replaced by this one terrifying rhythm, the slow, heavy beat of funeral drums. Then came the visions. He'd look out his window and see these ghostly funeral processions marching down the empty street. But they were always wrong, twisted somehow. There would only be 3 people carrying the bier instead of 4, so it would hang at this unnatural, lopsided angle, like the body was about to slide off. Then his food turned on him. A normal plate of rice would suddenly look like a squirming pile of maggots. His own bedroom, his safe space, started to feel like a tomb. The air got cold, the walls felt like they were closing in. And all this psychological torture created this insane physical hunger that nothing could fix. In his madness, desperate to eat something, anything, he started catching and eating cockroaches and lizards. He was being taken apart, systematically. You can just imagine his terror. He would plead with his family, his eyes wide with fear. "Can't you hear it?" he begged them, pressing his hands to his ears. "That sound, it's for a funeral. Please, just make it stop." But they heard nothing. To them, the night was perfectly quiet. They didn't see any processions, they didn't see any bugs in the food. All they saw was their son, their brother, falling into this private hell that they just couldn't understand. They took him to doctors who said it was stress, psychosis. They took him to spiritual healers. Nothing worked, it only got worse. He was completely alone, trapped inside a nightmare that he couldn't wake up from. Finally, his family was out of ideas. In a last desperate attempt to save him, they decided it had to be the city, or maybe the house itself. Maybe it was cursed. They decided to send him away to his grandmother's village. They hoped that the clean air, the distance from his life in Pune, that maybe it would break whatever horrible spell was on him. They packed his bags, put him on a train, and just prayed for him to get better. 3 days later, the phone rang. It was the worst possible news. Asim was dead. Through her tears, his grandmother told them about that final, horrifying night. Asim had a violent, terrible episode, screaming about drums and funerals, smashing things in his room. They cleaned him up and brought him into their own room to sleep so they could watch over him. But in the middle of the night, a sound woke them up. The door was open, Asim was gone. A frantic search started. Neighbors came out with flashlights, calling his name into the dark. They found him at sunrise. He was lying lifeless on the cold ground of the local cremation ground, the Shamshan Ghat. It was as if he had run straight to the one place he was supposed to end up, like he was answering a final call. So the official report was clean, simple, heart failure. And honestly, it makes sense for a young man under that much stress. It was a neat, tidy explanation. Case closed. But his family knew, and now we know, the story was so much deeper than that. The doctors saw a body that just gave out. They couldn't see the years of silent, simmering rage that led to this moment. They couldn't hear the phantom drums or see the ghostly parades that had marched a man's mind, and then his soul, straight into a grave. And life, well, it goes on. But for Asim's family, there was this dark cloud of unanswered questions that never went away. It was a permanent shadow over their lives. They mourned for their son, who they lost not to some disease they could understand, but to a strange madness that made no sense at all. Years went by.
The sharp horror of his final days just became this tragic, confusing family story. It really seemed like the truth was buried with him, gone forever.
But then, one day, years later, in 2023, a wandering holy man, a mystic, showed up at their door asking for some food. He took one look at the family, at the sadness that still hung in their home, and he stopped. He told them that someone in their house had died an unnatural death years ago, and that the boy's spirit was still not at peace. And then he told them the devastating truth they had always suspected deep down. He didn't go on his own, the mystic said, his voice quiet and sure. He was sent. Someone took out their enmity on him, a very powerful, very evil enmity. In that one single moment, everything clicked into place for Asim's brother, Imran. The college fight, the public beating, the weird, fake friendship that came after. He thought of Praneet. Driven by this horrifying new realization, he tried to find him, to confront him. He went to Praneet's old address in Pune, but he was gone. And not just him, his entire family. They had sold their house, changed all their phone numbers, and just vanished. No forwarding address, no trace, not even a whisper of where they might have gone. So what do we take away from this? It's a chilling lesson, really. A terrifying reminder that our actions, even the ones that come from stupid youthful pride, can have consequences that ripple out in ways we can never, ever predict. A single moment of public cruelty, an act that was just meant to put someone in their place, became the seed for a revenge that was patient, supernatural, and horrifyingly final. It really makes you think that the deepest wounds aren't the ones to our bodies, but to our pride, to our soul. And for those kinds of wounds, some people will demand a payment that is far more than just flesh and blood.
And that leaves us with this profoundly unsettling question. We like to think we live in a rational world, right? A world with rules that make sense. But this story just peels back that comfortable idea. It asks us to think about the incredible depths of resentment that can be hiding just behind a friendly smile. It asks us to consider the terrifying power of a grudge that's been held onto for years, and the horrifying idea that some debts aren't paid with an apology, but with something much, much worse. What tiny seed of tomorrow are you planting with your actions today?